Tonight on Mississippi Insight, the winds of change at the state capitol and the debate over the fate of Mississippi's state flag. From state leaders to business leaders to sports team leaders, a show of unity calling for change. Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, the push to change the state flag has dominated conversations at the Mississippi Capitol and has lawmakers working into the weekend. This past week, support for a change in the state flag surged as more state leaders came out in favor of a design that would replace the Confederate battle emblem with the state seal. Leaders from Attorney General Lynn Fitch to Senator Roger Wicker and former Governor Phil Bryant expressed their support. And Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann changed his stance, saying that the legislature needed to vote on the flag now. House Speaker Philip Gunn has supported changing the flag, while Governor Tate Reeves says that any decision should be up to a vote of the people. He did say vetoing a bill that comes out of the legislature would be futile because it would have to pass a veto-proof majority. And at the Capitol, a show of unity from the sports world. Athletic directors and coaches from many of the state's public universities gathered Thursday, all calling for a change in the flag.
And it's the right thing to do. You know, Mississippi needs to have a flag that is great for all the citizens in our state. Mississippi needs to have a flag that is right for all of our students in state and all of our out-of-state students and student athletes that come on our campus.
I played college for the legendary Pat Summitt at Tennessee. I coached at the University of South Carolina and at Old Dominion in Virginia. And I am now in my first months of coaching in Starkville. I know firsthand what it feels like to see a Confederate flag and pretend it doesn't have a racist, violent, or oppressive overtone. It screams hate, and it hurts me to my core. Our student athletes and our entire student body don't just commit to compete and represent Mississippi State, they commit and compete in representing the entire state of Mississippi.
What I do think is important, and that's why we're here, is you know, the purpose of a state flag is to unify the state, and right now this flag doesn't do that, you know, and everybody needs to be excited and appreciate this flag, and it needs to unify people, and they need to be thrilled to be a part of it, and I hope that that's the case.
Many of the state's top business leaders want to see the flag change from an economic standpoint. They believe it's keeping Mississippi from attracting good workers and business. I spoke with the head of the MEC, Scott Waller, earlier this week at his office downtown.
Scott, let's talk about where we are when it comes to the state flag and what the position is for MEC.
Well, MEC has had a long time position of supporting changing the flag. In fact, if you go back to the 2001 referendum, MEC was supporting getting the flag changed, even though it was going to have to be through the vote of the people. You know, unfortunately, the legislature had the ability to take action then and do it through a legislative action, and they chose to not do that. I think today we have an opportunity for them to do it again, and I think it needs to happen. It needs to happen quickly. Having a referendum, kicking the can down the road, it's not going to solve our problem. It's not going to take away the attention that we'll have. And honestly, Byron, if you go through and think about what will happen during the referendum process, it's not going to be good for our state. And then, Lord forbid, if the referendum were to fail and we continue to have this as our state flag, it's going to, economically, it's going to be a catastrophe in this state, because you're seeing more and more companies that are paying attention to it. And I think that you see our business leaders sign on to our campaign that we did. We just recently launched, and it's time. Just two simple words, it's time. That have signed on to that campaign because they understand, for us to move our state forward, for us to have a future where not only that businesses can be successful, which is the angle that MEC looks at it as, but we also look at it from the standpoint of our community, and making sure that we have a community that is together and proud of our state and working to improve our state. And it goes well beyond just that. And I think that's the one thing that is encouraging, is that for the first time we've really seen a number of our state legislators who are coming out and saying, okay, it's time, we need to do this, and we need to do it now. And I think given the environment that we're living in, given the situation we have in the state of Mississippi right now, that we have an opportunity in front of us. We have an opportunity to truly make a statement that's going to put us in a position to really be successful in attracting new businesses and ultimately changing the state image that we have here in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. What has changed in the last 19 years, do you believe, that's got us to this point?
Well, I mean, think about just right off the top of the bat, you have people who can vote today that weren't even born in 2001. You have a large number of people that did not have a say in that vote in 2001. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, what we have to say is, yes, that vote was taken, that was the will of the people in 2001. But there's a whole lot that's changed in the state of Mississippi since then. And that's number one. Number two, I think when you think about where we are as a state and what we need to be doing as a state, that we need to take away any impediment to our growth, any impediment to our future. And this is that opportunity to allow us to do that. It's the opportunity that will let us move our state into a position to really benefit from making a statement to not only the citizens of our state, but to the citizens of the country and to the world, that Mississippi realizes it's time to put that symbol in a place that is not going to offend as many people as it's doing today. That's the bottom line. That symbol, regardless of how people may feel about the heritage, the history, and all of that, the reality of the fact is, globally, that is considered a symbol of hatred and prejudice. And that is not the symbol that we believe should be representing the state of Mississippi. The economic developers across the state of Mississippi that I talk to on a regular basis says when they're competing for projects, it's used against us. And I think there are many cases that companies will not come because of the flag, won't say that because we may never even make the list to begin with. And that's where it hurts us. But we now have tangible evidence of what it's going to do for our state if we do not change the flag by the NCAA's decision to not allow post-season tournaments to take place in the state of Mississippi. If you've ever been to Starkville or Oxford or Hattiesburg for a baseball regional or to other places for some of the other sporting events that are taking place that are post-season events, you will see that has a major economic impact on those communities that are hosting it. You're talking about hotel sales, you're talking about food, you're talking about just general retail sales that take place as a result of being there. And not only that, what a wonderful opportunity to showcase some of the great things about our state when the other teams and the opposing teams and fans come in for those events. They get a chance to see Mississippi in a different light. And they get a chance to see what we really are, which is we have a lot of good things here. I mean, I brag about all of the things that are taking place in Mississippi, all the improvements we've seen in education, all of the, the steps that are being taken to improve our workforce here. You have wonderful climate, you have, beautiful scenery, you have all of these things. The quality of life here is just great. I mean, I'm a native of this state, I'm very proud of my state, and I want to continue to be proud of my state. But we have an impediment that's in front of us that does not allow us to be able to fully take advantage of all of these things that we have to offer.
Those who support the flag have said that this has basically been blackmail from other corporations, outsiders trying to make Mississippi change the flag. Do you believe it's blackmail?
Well, I don't believe it's blackmail because, as I mentioned, on Wednesday we launched our It's Time campaign. And as of today, we have over 700 business leaders that are MEC members or people in Mississippi that are interested in changing the flag that are signing on to this campaign. On Wednesday, when we released the ad, we have over 90 business leaders signed on with their actual signatures. They didn't want to just put their name, they wanted to sign on. And these are the corporate leaders in the state of Mississippi, not other places. So no, we're not being blackmailed by those outside the state. Our business leaders, our corporate leaders in the state of Mississippi understand how valuable this is and understand why we have to get this done now. We represent businesses more from an advocacy standpoint trying to make sure that our state legislature understands what are the things that we need to have in place for our businesses to succeed. But we do work hand in hand with our economic developers across the state. Those are the guys on the front lines of trying to get businesses here. And they say the first thing that we could do to help them do their job better is to get rid of this flag.
Are you surprised at how quickly the flag issue has moved?
You know, I think it, unfortunately, and I'll go back to, as you know, about 5 years ago, Speaker Philip Gunn came out and said we need to make a change. And the will from the legislative perspective was not there at that point. And we were discussing it with him, and he made a statement. He says, unfortunately, and I don't want this to happen, but something bad is going to have to happen for us to actually really get serious about taking this issue on. And Byron, unfortunately, that's what happened. Something bad happened. And, you know, it's unfortunate that that's what it came to, but it changes the conversation when that does happen. And what has happened is the conversation has now changed from, well, we know it's bad, we know we got to deal with it, let's figure out the best way to do it, and how do we get a strategy in place to do it, to all of a sudden going, we've got to do this right now.
Is there fear of backlash from voters? Is that some of the fear?
I think that's probably it.
We got some other crew back there.
Okay. I think that's probably what it is that we are, they're afraid that some of the voters in this district may be upset with them. But by the same token, there may be some voters in the district that will be upset with them if they don't do this. And that's the thing, is that, you know, when you make a decision to step into public office, and we greatly appreciate anyone who's willing to do that. Look, it's a sacrifice, we get that. But, you know, you take an oath to uphold an oath that you're supposed to be doing what's the best thing for our state. And right now, there's nothing more important for our state than to change our state flag.
When we come back, the big spike in COVID-19 cases. The virus surges in Mississippi. This past week also saw some of the highest number of COVID cases in Mississippi since the start of the pandemic, including nearly 1,100 cases reported Thursday. State Health Officer Dr. Thomas Dobbs didn't mince words about the surge in cases. He spoke to the media along with state epidemiologist Dr. Paul Byers.
We have seen significant stress on the health system, and then over the past couple of days, we've seen the highest number of hospitalized patients as well. Not so much ICU utilization, but there's a sequence from hospitalization then to ICU, and I'm absolutely terrified that we're going to overwhelm the health care system, the hospitals and ICU, not in the fall, which is something that had worried me previously, but I'm worried about next week or 2 weeks from now. We're already tight. We have a massively growing population of infected people that are going to transmit it more and more to older folks and people who are going to have severe adverse outcomes. This reckless social behavior is going to harm the whole state. It's going to harm the businesses in the state. It's going to harm our economy, and it's going to cause unnecessary deaths. And we just got to do those simple things, or we're going to pay the price.
We are seeing community transmission throughout Mississippi. And really, honestly, one of the big reasons we're seeing community transmission is because people are still not social distancing. They're still not wearing masks. They're still coming together in very large groups, parties, barbecues, social events, and these aren't even really associated with necessarily businesses. These are transmission that's occurring out in the community. Guys, this is something that we can really have an impact on if we all buy in to doing those things that really are necessary to prevent transmission. You know, there have been lots of parties where 300 plus people are getting together and they're close and they're drinking after each other. Look, guys, this is not we can't act surprised that we're seeing these types of increases in cases when we're not wearing masks, when we're still gathering socially, when we're not thinking about whether or not we need to go out and do something. Because let me tell you about the 18 to 29-year-old age group. The vast majority of those folks are going to recover without any long-term problems. But the thing about it is that they can spread that to the vulnerable population.
You know, we've spoken a lot, and obviously the governor is keenly interested in helping to get better control over this thing. Everybody wearing masks statewide is absolutely desirable. And how do you get to that is a real question. Until leaders across the state, at the state level, at the local level, law enforcement, the people who we depend on to be our examples, embrace it and understand, it's going to be really an untenable ban. I mean, an untenable mandate. So I'm hoping that people will engage in this, and I would look forward to a day when we could have universal acceptance of masking in public.
When we come back, a look inside Parchman through the eyes of an expert in correctional health. Why he says the state penitentiary is not fit to safely house inmates. Tonight, we are hearing from a public health expert who walked the halls of Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman earlier this year and didn't mince words, calling the conditions, quote, deplorable. 12 News' Lanaya Lewis has the interview and pictures, some graphic from inside Parchman.
But the conditions that are there are definitely the conditions that make for people dying.
Leaky roofs, wet floors, exposed wires, clogged toilets, and sinks. These are all startling images from inside Parchman.
By far, this is the worst jail or prison I've seen in the United States in 20 years. And I'll even say that I've rarely seen jails or prisons in such poor condition. And when I say poor condition, I mean having to live under poor conditions.
Dr. Mark Stern specializes in correctional health care. His statements are in a lawsuit filed June 8th by attorneys with Team Rock. Stern says when the team visited Parchman, they could only see certain areas of the prison. This included Unit 26, Notorious Unit 29, 30, 32, the holding cells, kitchen, and medical dental office.
I was walking through some of the living units while it was raining outdoors, and it was raining indoors also. And imagine your toilet is in your bedroom, and 24 hours a day for days on end, and some of them said weeks on end, the toilet's running. On the other hand, there were residents who said that they've gone days, if not weeks, without running water in their cell.
But Stern tells me the problems don't stop there. He details inadequate medical care for inmates and incomplete medical records.
When they get to the appointment, they're very often seen by an unqualified or unlicensed person, like an EMT or a lower level nurse who's not licensed to do the complex things required when you see a doctor. And then I saw instances where the doctor would order something to be done, for example, insulin, that a patient needed their insulin, but they didn't get it.
According to the lawsuit, 24 out of 33 plaintiffs have been transferred from Parchman since the suit was filed. We reached out to Mississippi Department of Corrections for a statement on the lawsuit. It says it cannot discuss pending litigation. In Jackson, Lanaya Lewis, 12 News.
We'll be right back with more perspective on the state flag debate. One month ago, the thought of changing the flag was unlikely. Prior efforts had failed, never even coming to the floor for a vote. Well, tonight, Walt Grayson takes us on a history tour of the state's complicated history with its flag.
Should lawmakers vote to change the flag, it would end a controversy that dates back more than 100 years. But the history of Mississippi's state flag, of course, dates back farther than that. The state's first official flag, the so-called Magnolia flag, was approved in 1861 following Mississippi's vote for secession. It remained the official flag through the Civil War and remained in use until 1894. That's when the current flag was approved, the one featuring the Confederate battle emblem. It was approved during a special session. Well, then in 1906, the legislature revised the state's legal code and inadvertently eliminated the official state flag. And no one found out about it until nearly 100 years later. That's in 2001 when Governor Ronnie Musgrove appointed a commission which came up with a new design, and it was put to a statewide referendum. And as we know, that effort was overwhelmingly defeated, 64% to keep the current flag. So the 1894 version became the official flag again and continued to fly. Now, there would be another push to change the flag in 2015 after the Charleston, South Carolina church shooting. All of the state's public universities refused to fly the flag after that, and some cities replaced it as well. But bills aimed at changing the flag never made it out of committee. And that brings us to today. Will 126 years of history come to an end? Well, we'll see.
Well, thanks to Scott Waller with the Mississippi Economic Council for joining us. Join us next week for another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.